15 surprising uses for vinegar. All learned from one time. My neighbor came over to ask. Can you believe that just one bottle of white vinegar in the kitchen can help you clean the entire house? From the kitchen dining room to windows, cutting boards and the oven, without spending a cent on expensive chemicals? Today, I will share with you my true story about a morning that seemed perfectly ordinary, but taught me 15 valuable lessons I had never considered before, from cutting grease on the stove, deodorizing the fridge, unclogging the sink, to polishing silverware. And the interesting thing is, it all started when my neighbor knocked on the door asking for a little vinegar because she was cleaning her house to welcome her granddaughter home for Thanksgiving. I got curious and went over to see, and from there opened up a whole treasure chest of cleaning tips. Some of these tips are even better than specialized products sold in stores. I used to believe that cleaning required many different specialized solutions to be effective, but after that day, I completely changed my mind. Vinegar is not only cheap and safe, but also much more powerful than I thought. At the end of the video, I will share the 15th use, a tip that even professional cleaners don't often reveal. Trust me, you'll want to try it right after hearing it. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you find this content useful. Your support is the motivation for us to continue sharing more meaningful things. Thank you for being here. That morning I was working when I heard a familiar knock at the door. Mrs. Sanders, my neighbor in her 70s but quick and lively, stood at the door holding a glass cup. Frank, do you have any white vinegar left? I'm cleaning the house, but ran out. I asked. Oh, are you making pickles? She laughed. No, I'm cleaning the house to welcome little Sophie, my granddaughter, for Thanksgiving. But I ran out of vinegar halfway through, so annoying. I was surprised. Vinegar is for cooking. Why use it for cleaning? She said, come over and I'll show you. At her house, there was a faint smell of vinegar. The kitchen was shiny, with a bottle of white vinegar and several spray bottles set out. She said, this stuff is a treasure. I use it for all kinds of things, not just cooking. Let me tell you 15 ways I use vinegar. And from then on, I learned a set of tips I still use to this day. Use 1. Cutting grease on the stove. Mrs. Sanders led me to the gas stove and said, this is why I always keep a big bottle of white vinegar in the kitchen. She pointed to faint greasy spots on the grates and stainless steel surface, places that look clean at first glance, but feel gritty to the touch. If you only use dish soap and scrub, it's tiring and time-consuming. She shook her head. She took out a clear spray bottle with a slightly cloudy liquid inside and explained, I mix white vinegar and warm water in a 1-to-1 ratio. If I want it stronger, I warm the mixture in the microwave for about 30 seconds before spraying. Spray evenly over the stove surface, the grates and corners. Then leave for 10 minutes for the vinegar to soak in and soften the grease. While waiting, she added, vinegar is safe, no chemical smell. Even if Sophie comes into the kitchen, I'm not worried. When the time was up, she took a damp cloth and wiped once. The grease disappeared immediately, leaving the surface shiny like new. See? No need to scrub hard, and it's still clean, she smiled. I touched it and felt smooth and cool, completely different from before. Seeing that, I immediately thought of my stove with its old yellow stains. Just with a bottle of white vinegar and some warm water, I could solve them without buying expensive degreasers anymore. Use 2. Cleaning the microwave. Mrs. Sanders opened the microwave door, and inside was bright and spotless, with no trace of dirt. She said, I used to let food splatter inside, and forget to wipe it right away. Over time, it dried hard, smelled bad, and was tiring to scrub off. Now it's different, just vinegar, and that's it. She took a glass bowl, poured in 2 cups of water and half a cup of white vinegar, and placed it in the middle. I turn it on the highest setting for 5 minutes. Steam from this mixture rises, and the acid in the vinegar will soften all the dirt and deodorize. When the microwave stopped, she didn't open the door immediately but waited another 2 minutes. That way, the steam continues to stick and dissolve the dirt, she explained. Then she carefully took out the bowl, used a damp cloth to wipe lightly around the walls, the top, and the bottom. The dirt came off easily, no hard scrubbing needed. I leaned in to smell, and the old food odor was gone, replaced by a clean, fresh scent. She smiled. I do this whenever I'm about to heat pumpkin pie, so the new smell isn't mixed with the old. Watching her, I thought with this tip, I'll no longer have to work hard to scrape dry dirt or spray harsh-smelling chemicals. Just a few minutes with white vinegar and the microwave looks like new, and it's safe for the whole family. Use 3. Unclogging the sink. Mrs. Sanders pointed to the sink, saying that last night she washed the turkey tray, and grease and food crumbs went down, making the water drain very slowly. She said if you leave it like that, it will smell and clog faster. She opened the cabinet, took out a box of baking soda, measured half a cup, and poured it straight down the drain. Immediately after, she poured in 1 cup of white vinegar. A fizzing sound rose with strong white foam. She smiled, explaining that this reaction helps loosen residue and grease inside the pipes. She used a rubber stopper to seal the drain, saying if you don't have one, you can use a damp cloth instead. The goal is to keep the reaction happening inside for about 15 minutes. While waiting, she boiled a kettle of water. When the time was up, she removed the stopper and poured all the boiling water down in one go. The water drained quickly again, back to normal speed. She said she still does this once a month to prevent clogs, especially after meals with a lot of grease. I immediately remembered the times my sink drained slowly and I had to call a plumber, costing money and wasting time. Her method is simple, cheap, safe, with no chemical smell, and anyone can do it themselves. Use 4. Streak-free window cleaning. Mrs. Sanders led me to the big window looking out to the garden, where sunlight was streaming in, but the glass still had patches of haze. She said that before, she used store-bought glass cleaner, and while it looked shiny at first, once it dried, you could see obvious streaks, which was very annoying. Now, she mixes 1 part white vinegar with 2 parts water, adds exactly 1 drop of dish soap, and pours it into a spray bottle. She sprays it evenly over the glass, then uses a microfiber cloth to wipe in circles to loosen dust and any grease film. Next, she switches to wiping in straight lines from top to bottom so the glass dries evenly with no streaks. In just a few minutes, the pane was so clear it almost disappeared. She said this formula works for mirrors, oven doors, or glass cabinet doors in the kitchen. No chemical smell, no quick dust build-up, and far more economical than buying commercial cleaners. I stood looking out into the garden through the freshly cleaned glass, and everything seemed sharper and more vivid. In my head, I thought I should probably toss my old bottles of glass cleaner and try her way right away. Use 5. Deodorizing the refrigerator. Mrs. Sanders opened her fridge door, neat and fresh inside, without any mix of food odors. She said that in the past, if she forgot a container of food for a few days, the smell would spread everywhere in the fridge. and even after throwing it away and cleaning, the odor still lingered. Now she simply mixes 2 tablespoons of white vinegar with 1 cup of water, dips a clean cloth in it, and wipes all the shelves, drawers, and walls. The mild acid in vinegar helps neutralize odors, disinfect, and clean the surface without leaving harmful chemicals. For strong odors, she puts a small bowl of pure vinegar inside the fridge for a few hours, then takes it out and lets the fridge air out before restocking food. She said she does this once a week to keep the fridge smelling fresh, and after a deep clean, she always leaves a standby bowl of vinegar in the fridge for at least half a day. I took a sniff. Only the fresh scent of food remained. None of that mixed smell you get from long-neglected fridges. She smiled and said that keeping the fridge odor-free is also a way to protect your health, since bacteria and mold are much less likely to grow. I nodded, thinking that just a few spoonfuls of vinegar had turned opening the fridge each day into a pleasant experience. Use 6 removing limescale from faucets. Mrs. Sanders took me to the sink, pointed at the shiny faucet head, and told me it used to be covered in a hard grey-white crust. That's limescale, she said, caused by mineral deposits in the water, especially in hard water areas. If you don't treat it, it looks bad and can block the flow. She took a paper towel, soaked it in white vinegar, and wrapped it tightly around the faucet head. For tricky spots, she used a small plastic bag filled with vinegar, slipped it over the faucet head, and secured it with a rubber band. Leave it for at least 2 hours. Overnight if it's bad, she explained as she worked. After removing the wrap, she gently scrubbed with an old toothbrush, and the crust flaked off in pieces. The faucet shone like new stainless steel, with no trace of the old buildup. She said this works on shower heads, filter tips, and other metal fittings in the kitchen. No harsh chemicals, no unpleasant smell, and the results are immediate. I ran my hand over the surface, smooth and shiny, and thought I should do the same for my faucet, which had been dull for ages. Use 7. Disinfecting and deodorizing cutting boards. Mrs. Sanders pulled a wooden cutting board from the shelf, set it on the table and said, "This is one of the dirtiest things in the kitchen, because the cut grooves trap food bits and odors." She sprinkled a layer of coarse salt evenly across the board, then rubbed it firmly with half a lemon. Salt gives a light scrub. Lemon kills bacteria and removes odor. But the secret is this, she said, pouring a little white vinegar over the foaming salt and lemon mix. A fresh, tangy smell spread out along with a faint fizzing sound. She left the mixture on the board for about 5 minutes, so the acid and lemon oil could penetrate deeply, then rinsed with hot water and dried it immediately. I put my nose close. No trace of fish or onion, just a light lemon scent. She said the same works for plastic boards, but they must be dried thoroughly to prevent moisture. Doing this once a week keeps the board sanitized, odor-free, and lasting longer. I looked at the board, now as clean as if it were new, and thought this was a simple, effective method without using harsh cleaners. Use 8 cleaning burnt pot bottoms. Mrs. Sanders pulled an old stainless steel pot from under the stove, its bottom blackened as if it had been held over a flame. She said, "The other day I was boiling potatoes, got distracted by a phone call, forgot to turn off the stove, the water boiled away, the potatoes burned, and the bottom got a hard layer like cement. Instead of scraping hard and risking scratches, she filled the pot to cover the burnt area, added half a cup of white vinegar, and put it back on the stove. She turned the heat to medium and let it boil for about 10 minutes. As it boiled, the burnt smell faded and the layer began to loosen. After letting it cool slightly, she gently scraped with a wooden spoon, and the burnt pieces slid off easily. For stubborn spots, she sprinkled a bit of baking soda, gave a light scrub and rinsed clean. The pot came out shiny with no burnt smell. She said this works for non-stick and cast iron pots too, as long as you don't use sharp objects to scrape. I immediately thought of a pot at home sitting out of commission from a burnt bottom. I'd have to try this tonight. Use knives, removing rust from metal tools. Mrs. Sanders opened the bottom drawer and pulled out an old knife with brown spots on the blade. This is rust. Leave it long enough and it eats into the metal. The knife's as good as gone, she said. She filled a glass with white vinegar and submerged the blade. At least an hour, and overnight if it's bad, she said, setting it aside. When the time was up, she took the knife out and gently scrubbed with fine steel wool, and the rust flaked away, revealing bright metal underneath. She then washed it with soap, dried it immediately, and applied a thin layer of cooking oil to prevent rust from returning. She said this works for scissors, spoons, forks, or any rusted metal tool, as long as it doesn't have a coating that can peel. I held the knife, feeling like it had been brought back to life from the scrap pile. She smiled and said, "Don't throw things away too quickly. Vinegar can save more than you think." Use 10. Cleaning the inside of the oven. Mrs. Sanders opened her oven, the inside coated with yellow grease and hardened food bits. She said she used to buy oven cleaner, but the chemical smell was overwhelming and she had to wear thick gloves to use it. Now she just makes a simple mix. Half a cup of white vinegar and half a cup of water, poured into an oven-safe dish, placed inside the oven. She set the oven to 180 degrees Celsius and let it run for about 45 minutes. The vinegar steam coats the oven walls, softening all the baked-on grease and residue. Once cooled, she removes the dish and wipes with a damp cloth. The grime slides right off. For stubborn bits, she mixes baking soda with vinegar to make foam and scrubs lightly with a sponge. In just one afternoon, the oven is shiny again with no lingering smell. She said that doing this once a month keeps the oven ready for baking without old odors ruining the flavor. I looked at her oven and thought, no need for harsh chemicals, just a few pantry staples are enough. Use 11. Sanitizing sponges and dishcloths. Holding up a sponge, Mrs. Sanders said, "This is for cleaning, but if you don't disinfect it, it's a germ factory." She filled a bowl with hot water, adding 2 parts water to 1 part white vinegar. She soaked the sponge and several dishcloths for about 15 minutes. For stronger disinfection, I soak in pure vinegar for 5 minutes, she said. While soaking, the sponge's smell faded, replaced by a light vinegar scent. For extra dirty ones, she added a tablespoon of baking soda to make fizzing bubbles that help lift grime. After soaking, she wrung them out, rinsed under the tap, and hung them to dry in a breezy spot. "I do this at least twice a week," she said. "It's cheap and keeps me from spreading germs all over the kitchen." I thought about all the times I'd wiped my table with a week-old damp cloth. A dangerous habit. Just a few minutes with vinegar made everything cleaner and safer. Use 12. Removing coffee and tea stains. Mrs. Sanders took out a ceramic mug, the inside of which was stained brown. "These are coffee and tea stains. Soap won't get them out," she said. She filled it almost full with pure white vinegar and let it soak for about an hour. "If the stain's heavy, I leave it overnight so the vinegar acid breaks down the residue," she explained. When ready, she added a bit of coarse salt to the mug, stirred gently so the salt acted as a mild abrasive, then scrubbed with a soft sponge. The stains faded, revealing the original bright glaze, She rinsed it with warm water, dried it, and put it back on the shelf. She said the same method works for teapots, thermos flasks, or glasses stained by drinks. No chemical smell, no heavy scrubbing, and it's inexpensive. I looked at the mug, now spotless and fresh smelling, and thought I'd never worry about those stubborn brown rings again. Use 13. Cleaning the blender. Mrs. Sanders set the blender on the table and said, "If this appliance isn't cleaned thoroughly, leftover smells and residue will affect the flavor of the next recipe." She poured 2 cups of warm water and half a cup of white vinegar into the jar, put the lid on, and ran it on the highest setting for 1 minute. This way, the water and vinegar mixture reaches every crevice, even around the blades where it's hard to scrub, she explained. After switching it off, she let the mixture soak for another 10 minutes so the vinegar's acid could break down the buildup and odors. Then she blended for another 30 seconds, poured everything out, rinsed with clean water, dried it, and put the blender back in its place. I took a sniff. No trace of the sharp vegetable or fruit smells from before. She said doing this once a week keeps the blender clean, the blades in good condition, and prevents smells from transferring to the next batch. I thought, this is a quick, simple method without the hassle of taking it apart. Use 14. Deodorizing. Plastic containers. Mrs. Sanders opened the cupboard under the sink and pulled out a few food storage containers that had been washed but still smelled of soup and curry. "Plastic traps odors easily, especially from strongly spiced foods," she said. She poured half a cup of white vinegar into each container, added warm water almost to the top, and sealed the lids. "Soak for at least 2 hours, giving them an occasional shake so the mixture reaches every corner," she explained. For containers with stubborn smells, she added 2 tablespoons of baking soda, creating fizz to speed up deodorizing. When the time was up, she poured out the liquid, washed them with soap, rinsed, and dried them. I opened one she'd just cleaned and sniffed. The curry smell was completely gone, replaced by a light, fresh scent. She said this works for plastic bottles, sports water flasks, and spice jars too. It saves money and extends the life of the containers, she added. No need to throw them out just because the smell lingers. I nodded, thinking I should try it on the stack of plastic boxes cluttering my kitchen. Use 15. Polishing metal items. Mrs. Sanders opened her display cabinet and took out a set of stainless steel spoons and forks that had dulled with use. "Metal loses its shine over time," she said, then mixed 1 part white vinegar with 1 part warm water, adding a teaspoon of fine salt and stirring until dissolved. She dipped a soft cloth in the solution, wrung it out, and polished each spoon and fork in small circles. Vinegar removes tarnish. Salt acts as a gentle abrasive, she explained. Once polished, she rinsed them with clean water and buffed them dry with a soft cloth. Sunlight from the window made the flatware gleam as if brand new. She said this works on stainless steel, aluminum, copper, and even silver, as long as you polish gently to avoid scratches. "I usually do this before guests come over. It makes the table look much nicer," she said with a proud smile. I held a spoon, cool to the touch, and so shiny I could see my reflection, and thought that with a little vinegar, some salt, and a few minutes' work, even tired old metal could be revived. Sitting in Mrs. Sanders's bright kitchen, I looked around once more. From the spotless microwave, the fresh-smelling fridge, and the crystal-clear windows, to the gleaming flatware, everything stood as living proof of the power of white vinegar. I smiled and said, "You do have a treasure trove of secrets." She waved it off. "It's nothing, Frank, just making the most of what's already here. Saving money and staying safe. The important thing is, when you care for your home will care for you." As I left, the soft scent of vinegar lingered on my sleeve, and in my mind, I was already listing the things I needed to tackle at home. I realized that sometimes the solution isn't in expensive or complicated products, but in a paying just few dollar bottle of white vinegar always sitting in the kitchen. Since that day, every time I reach for the vinegar, I remember Mrs. Sanders carefully wiping every little corner and remind myself that keeping a home clean isn't just for appearances. It's about creating a comfortable, warm space for the people you love. Thank you for following along with the story and the 15 simple yet incredibly useful tips I learned from Mrs. Sanders. I hope you'll also find a few tricks that work perfectly for your own home. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit like, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you won't miss the next great tips. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to keep bringing you more valuable and relatable content. See you in the next video, and may your home always be clean, cozy, and filled with laughter.